What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is part of a series where I focus on Academy Award Best Picture nominees from a certain year. Done such years in the past, such as 2000 all the way to 2017, and you clicked on this video so you know it. This time around, I'm focusing on the 2018 Academy Award Best Picture nominees and ranking them from worst to best. Now, here's the thing. From the 1940s to 2008, it was 5 Best Picture nominees, and then 2009 onwards, it was the possibility of there being 10 Best Picture nominees. And I say the possibility because first couple of years, 2009, 2010, they had it where, yes, they were actually going to fill in all 10 slots. But then there was that weird period of time where it was like, oh, we're using preferential voting, and we're not going to actually fill in all 10 slots, but there's the possibility of it. So we'll give it like 8 or 9 Best Picture nominees. And it happened to be that in the year 2018, there were 8 Best Picture nominees. So I'll be ranking them from 8 being the worst to 1 being the best, and of course, my humble opinion. But guys, enough exposition. Let's get started. So kicking things off at the bottom of the list, we have my number 8, which is Bohemia Rap City. I'm not a fan of this movie. I'm really not. I gave it a 3 out of 5 when I saw it in theaters, but in retrospect, I would give it a much lower rating. I don't like this movie. The fact that it won a bunch of Oscars made me want to throw myself off a roof. I'm not even kidding. It blew my mind, the fact that this movie won not Best Picture, but it won like Best Editing, Best Actor over all these like more, in my personal opinion, deserving categories. It was so frustrating. It really was. And it's not even like the movie's fault, because the movie itself is not bad per se. It's just a very by-the-numbers music biopic. I can see why some people like this movie, but look, I'm also not critiquing this as someone that hates Rami Malek. I love Rami Malek. Rami Malek is someone I've been following for the last decade. He is someone that I loved him in Mr. Robot, which is, I don't want to spoil anything, but it is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. I absolutely love that show and his performance in it. But it's just everything about Bohemia Rhapsody just reeks of mehness. I'm not a fan of the editing. I'm really not a fan of the half-hour concert at the end. I'm not a fan of the structure. The dialogue, I'm also not a fan of. There's just a lot about this movie that I do not like. And that is why it is my number 8. Next up, my number 7 is A Star Is Born. Yeah, I know that this is going to anger a lot of people, because I do know a lot of people that do like A Star Is Born. And look, truthfully, I think this is a rock-solid film. I did see it twice in theaters, once by myself, and then the second time I saw it with my girlfriend, who is now my wife, and she really liked this movie. And I do like elements of this movie. I just think as a whole, it is a very uneven film. Kind of reminds me of Braveheart. And I know it's what you're thinking. It's like, wait a minute, Braveheart's a completely different movie. By that, I mean that Braveheart is also a movie that it is very uneven, but it has elements of greatness, scenes that are quite memorable. And A Star Is Born is kind of like that too. It's a very uneven movie that does have some very memorable scenes. And some of those scenes, it's like, oh my goodness, that's so good. But at the same time, I can't forget all the elements surrounding those scenes and how all the elements around those scenes aren't as good. So again, it's a movie that has good scenes, but unfortunately, as a whole, I just think it's solid. And that's okay. I still like it. And yeah, it's my number 7. Next up, my number 6. This is going to anger a lot of people, the fact that I have this position here. But my number 6 is Roma. It's a solid movie. I saw it twice. I did like it a little bit less the second time, but I still respect this film. It's a slice-of-life film. It's very, very, very well shot. Holy cow, the cinematography is glorious. It's very well acted. I just wasn't a big fan of the pacing. Truthfully, that kind of made me struggle a bit with this movie, especially upon rewatch, and it kind of made me say to myself, I don't really know if I'm going to rewatch this film. From time to time, again, I'll see the Criterion Blu-ray, at Barnes & Nobles when I go on my shopping, but I haven't really had the urge to revisit this film, and it's been almost 5 years, so I don't know. Who knows? Only time will tell. Maybe this will go up higher, but yeah, it's my number 6. Next up, my number 5. Again, this is going to anger a lot of people, because my number 5 I know will actually be a lot of people's last, but my number 5 is Green Book. Look, did this deserve Best Picture? No. Absolutely not. But I feel like a lot of times people mistake a movie that doesn't deserve winning Best Picture for a bad movie. It's similar to Crash. A lot of people are like, Crash is a bad movie. It's the worst Academy Award Best Picture winner. Same with Green Book. And it's like, I'm sorry. Have you seen like 5 Best Picture winners? Really? Because let me tell you, as someone that's seen all 90+ Academy Award Best Picture winners, this is like in like the middle, a little bit below the middle. It's like on the lower side, but it is not anywhere close to being the worst. I promise you that. Watch all of them. just watch all of them. Now, look, I'm also just going to say this. Green Book, I do like this film. I think it is very enjoyable. It is one of those situations where if it didn't win Best Picture, I would say that it is a rock-solid film that, I'm glad that people enjoy. But at the same time, it's the fact that it won Best Picture over more deserving entries. And it's also a very safe movie in terms of its themes and messages. And I do acknowledge that. And I think especially the ending, it's like, oh, well, I guess they solved racism. It's the same thing with like The Help and The Blind Side, where it's like it's well intended, but it does have its issues. But I would be lying if I said that I didn't enjoy elements of this film quite a bit. I mean, that's why I own it on 4K. I really like the chemistry between the leads. I think the humor is quite funny. It's very well shot. Score is really good. It's very well paced too. It's just some of the themes and messages, how they handle them, could have been done better. And again, I think that that's something that I wanted to address. I think it's important. But by no means is this a bad film, in my personal opinion. This is, of course, my list. But yeah, that is my number 5. Next up, my number 4, we have Black Panther. Not only is this one of the best MCU entries, it is also a really, really riveting blockbuster. It is very thought-provoking. It's got a great villain performance. I mean, holy cow. Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger is quite something. I also love the score. Ludwig Göransson's score I listen to daily. I'm not even going to lie. I absolutely adore it. Third act does kind of falter a bit because of the CGI, but at the same time, because I know the behind the scenes and how a lot of, I'm going to call out Disney, a lot of the people at Disney just weren't really trusting with this film, so a lot of the VFX workers got pushed to Infinity War. They're like, all right, we got to work on Infinity War. Infinity War came out after this, so there were some visual effects that just unfortunately weren't as polished because a lot of the people just weren't able to finish working on it and had to get pushed to Infinity War. My source, Corridor Crew. You guys should check out the video. It's really interesting stuff. I found that a couple years ago, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I'm a bit forgiving of that third act, but even so, the first 2 acts, holy cow, really good stuff. One of the better blockbusters, and yeah, I really like Black Panther, and that is why it is, that's why it's my number 4. Next up, my number 3, this is divisive, I know, but I gotta say, I really like this film. My number 3 is Vice. This is a really good blend of comedy and drama. It's got excellent performances. I, personally, of the best actor nominees, I would have hands down given this to Christian Bale as Dick Cheney. Holy cow, what a performance. What a performance. Makeup's incredible. The score by Nicholas Brittle, it's really good stuff. I think that this is a film that, unfortunately, because of its divisive nature, I can see why some people might not even give this a chance. But I would definitely say check it out, at the very least, because it is a film that, it is a swing. It is a swing for the fences. And maybe it's a swing that struck out for some people, but for me, it was I'll say it not quite a home run, but I would say it's a triple in terms of baseball terminology. But I really like this film. That's why I own it on Blu-ray. Next up, my number 2, I can't lie, my number 1 and 2, it's very difficult to choose which I like more, but doing this list, I decided that my number 2 would be this. But my number 2 is Black Clansman. Now here's the thing, Black Klansman was the film that I was actually rooting for to win Best Picture. I knew the race was Roma versus Green Book, but I was hoping that this would be kind of like the spoiler. And Black Klansman does what Green Book kind of should have done, which is have an ending that showcases how racism is something that can't just be solved over, like a road trip. It's something that, unfortunately needs to actually be put under a microscope and studied and to see what needs to be fixed. And I think that this film does a really good job of analyzing that. And I think that the dynamics between the characters, the ending is very hard-hitting. There's a lot to appreciate. The score is so good. Love the way it's shot. It's got that, signature Spike Lee look. It looks immaculate on 4K. One of my favorite films of 2018, and yeah, I would highly, highly recommend you check it out if you haven't done so already. And yeah, that's why it's my number 2. Next up, my number 1, it's going to be kind of funny to say out loud, but my favorite entry of the Best Picture nominees is my number 1, which is The Favorite. I love this film. I think that this film does such a great job of, these 3 lead performances, really fleshing them out in terms of the characters, but also having it where it's a very unpredictable story that is both sad, tragic, and at the same time also somehow comedic. It's not going to be for everyone. It's a Yorgos Lanthimos film. He's the same director who did The Lobster and The Killing of Sacred Deer. if you've seen any of those films, you know that the guy is not exactly a mainstream kind of, director. He's definitely a very oddball kind of director, which is what I very much so appreciate about him. But yeah, The Favorite, I loved. Not for everyone, but if you're on the film's wavelength, it's great. It's a masterpiece in my eyes. But yeah, that was my number one. Guys, let me know your ranking for the 2018 Best Picture nominees. I'll be very curious to hear your guys' thoughts. I can definitely imagine that there's going to be a lot of people putting Green Book at the very end of theirs, which is fine. I'm very curious, honestly, to hear your guys' ranking down below. And as always, guys, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow me down Letterboxd, and I will catch you guys later.